Yelah, kan?
Assalamualaikum. We are already on Facebook and we will start our session exactly at 10 this morning. Okay.
Every Senin kita ampun schedule.
So Parliament, my priority is Parliament. So during Parliament time, I'm Parliament lah.
Okay, meeting Monday to Thursday.
Yes. Cuma mention dengan ada sidak nama ni.
And I totally agree with what
Share screen.
And also Mr. Nalwa. I would like to welcome also
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning everyone. Welcome to Razak School of Government's third webinar. Today's webinar is focused on the resilient leader. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and the structure of our webinar session today. To those who follow this webinar through Zoom, please mute your microphones. We are also broadcasting this webinar live on our Facebook. This webinar session is divided into 3 segments. First, we will begin with key questions posed to our guest speaker. Then, we will answer questions from participants. At any time during the webinar, you may submit your questions to the guest speaker. You need to just type your questions in the chat section. Please keep your questions short and straightforward. As time allows, we will address as many questions as possible. Lastly, we wrap up today's webinar session. We will be recording this webinar and we'll share the link on our website and social. Our guest speaker. Yang berbahagia, Datuk Muhammad Khairul Adib Abdul Rahman began his career in the civil service in 1988. He has served various ministries and departments over the period of 32 years, such as the Ministry of Science, Technology and Environment, Ministry of Education, and at our missions in Tokyo and London. He holds an honours degree in science and later pursued his master in public policy at Saitama University, Japan, under Monbuka Gakusho Scholarship. He was appointed Secretary General of Ministry of Transport before assuming the position of Director General of Public Service in 2019. Dato is one of the permanent member of the Board of Trustees of Razak School of Government. He is also an alumni of Razak School of Government. Yang berbahagia, Datuk Muhammad Khairul Adib, let us get started. The first question to the guest speaker is, what is your general thought on being resilient? Dipersilakan Datuk Muhammad Khairul Adib.
Thank you, Johari. Thank you for inviting me to your webinar and thank you for the generous CV that you have read out on me. It's good to be back with RSOG. On the question you posed to me, I would like to, it reminds me back of the time when I was still young, when I went to Museum Negara. I don't know how many people have been to Museum Negara. And there's a big poster of Hang Tuah there. At the bottom it says, takkan Melayu hilang di dunia. I don't know how to translate that in English. I think the Malay race will not be wiped out from the face of the earth. And also we have, so what does it mean? You know, I will answer that later.
Video.
I will answer that later as we go along our main topic today on resilient leader. So the second one is that we also study in school on theory of evolution by Darwin, survival of the fittest. And at the same time also, I'm constantly reminded by Einstein saying that the only constant is change. So taking all these three together, takkan Melayu hilang di dunia, survival of the fittest, and the only constant is change, this is where resilience come into picture. So to me, the world is changing. As we, even without COVID, it's changing. The landscape that we're sitting on, that we're standing on today is changing every second, every minute. For example, in our office, we have people from the baby boomers generation, from generation X, generation Y, and I don't know what they will call after this. So every generation will have to be approached differently. So this is where this requires us to change our norms to become more sustainable, and we need to sustain the organization. So the challenge now is that how to make ourselves relevant in time. So coming back to the current situation we face now on COVID-19, as a business entity, we see ourselves as a business entity, the businesses around us are suffering because of COVID-19. So they need to actually to reactivate themselves, to reinvent themselves, to make them more future-proof and relevant for survival. So basically, Johari,
Yes, saya, betul.
my general thought on resilience over here, it goes beyond adaptive leadership. Being resilient over here is actually, we must take advantage, we must take opportunity of the chaos, of the turbulence that we have now to make us more, to bring us to greater heights. So resilience over here is not only what Darwin says, survival, but I think it goes beyond that. And this is where I think back to what Hang Tuah says, that takkan Melayu hilang di dunia, we cannot just laying idle, otherwise we'll be just left behind and sooner or later we fade away. So in order for us to remain relevant and important and also important to the future, we need to be resilient. So resilient, if you look at the dictionary, it comes from the Latin word, recall or rebounds. So it shows that in any situation, when we are faced with some situation, we must be adaptive and we must make sure that we find ways and means for us to get out of that and becomes better. So taking opportunity. This is where sometimes businesses, you find business leaders who can bring their business to greater heights are those people who are looking at, for every problem, there's always an opportunity. That is my short take, Johari, on your question about my general thoughts of resilience.
Thank you, Dato'. Thank you very much for the three profound metaphors that you just shared. If we get you correctly, being resilient is not about survival alone, but how to find ways to go to the greater height by a rebound from the whatever setbacks that you are facing. We're going to the second question, Dato'. Our second question is, why is it important to be a resilient leader? And bagi Dato', what do you think?
Thank you, Joe. As I mentioned just now, is that being resilient is not only to be adaptive, but we must take opportunity to bring us out of the current situation that we have, and also to bring us to greater height. So why being resilient is important? Being resilient is important because it requires us to remain relevant. When we are resilient, we are putting in measures to ensure that we are future-proof, in the sense that we can continue to be of service or to be of relevant to whatever we are doing. So why is it important again, Jory, that if you are not resilient, you'll be left behind. We face this kind of people in many instances in our office. those who are always absent in office because they can't adapt, they can't survive. So this is very important that we must actually nurture, we must coach our officers to be a bit more resilient by reinventing themselves. Skills that are relevant in yesteryears are no longer needed today. So you need to change. You need to equip yourself so that you can be of importance no matter what time of the day it is. So being resilient over here, in the sense that we must make ourselves important at any point of time. So yeah, that's it, Joe.
Thank you, Dato'. If we get you correctly, we need to ensure that we stay relevant, and being relevant is very important for a leader.
If I may add a bit, Joe, actually,
Yeah.
I look at my organization also equivalent to any business entity.
Right.
In the sense that you face challenges, you face new markets, you face new challenges every day.
Right.
If you can't reinvent yourself, if you can't stay relevant, if you can't adapt and take advantage, when people are changing, you'll be left behind. So as what I mentioned just now, the quotation from Einstein here is that the only constant is change. People around us are changing. Things around us changing. We have new economic challenges. We have new situation that we face every day, and we cannot take things as normal. So we are adapting to new normals every day. As I mentioned just now, even in office, we have people of various backgrounds. Some are from rich family, B40, some M40, some from T20. We have people from the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and they approach work differently. So we must understand them. We must make sure that we actually exploit the best of people. So this is where now being resilient ensures the survival, ensures your survival, ensures your relevancy continuously. As a business entity, we must make sure that our business or our service remains needed. It remains of a service. In government, of course, we provide service, but our service must also be of relevant to time. So there are some services which we have actually conducted in the 60s and 70s, which is not relevant because the ecosystem has changed. So this is where we must move in time. So moving in time, not only to adapt, but also to see what better things that we can do so as we can remain relevant in time.
Dato', we have get some general thoughts on being resilient from you, and you also share with us why is it important to be a resilient leader. It brings us to the third and the last key question from RSOG. What are the ways to become a resilient leader? Silakan, Dato'.
To become a resilient leaders. Many ways actually, Joe, to become resilient leaders. I see number one, actually, as I mentioned just now, we see failures. We see failures as a temporary setback, but we must recover quickly. So this way just now, we're taking opportunity. Just like I said, some businessmen, for every problem, there's always opportunity. So this is where leadership, when we are faced with some situation, turbulence or chaos or situation, that we need not succumb ourselves to it, but we take advantage and we see what better we can do to recover from it quickly, and also to come up with new products and also services. The other one is that how to become a more resilient is that we must have a very positive attitude. I want to read what I read yesterday because there was someone who sent me. They said that we must stay away from negative people because negative people will always have a problem for every solution. So negative people, we must shy away from them because whenever we provide a solution, there's always a problem to them. So for resilient leaders, first they must have a positive attitude. They must see failures as something which just as a temporary setback, and they must use the opportunity to recover quickly and to reposition themselves to a better height, to a higher height. But I believe some of these traits you can read from the books, but I just want to pick up one or two, which is to me is very important. To become a resilient leaders, first and foremost, we must be sensitive. We must feel the emotions. We must understand the surrounding around us. We must actually be aware, and to a certain extent, you internalize the problem that's facing us. So when you have that, then you start to think how to get yourself out of the situation and how to make yourself better. So resilient leaders are supposed to be, they're supposed to be adaptive. They're supposed to be current with time. So whenever there's a situation we are facing, this way, people will look at leaders to find solution. So to your question, how to become, I think there's a lot in the books that we can read. But first and foremost, just now I mentioned that failure should not set us back. We should see failures as an opportunity for us to bring us to greater height. Number two is that we must have positive attitude. We must not just succumb or just surrender ourselves to the failures we have. But failures is supposed to toughen ourselves back again. Third thing is that we must be a bit more aware, and we must be more emotionally involved in the issues that we have, so that we can internalize and we can know what solution we can get and understand the situation and bring us out of the issues. And we must find ways how to move forward. So important thing about being resilient leaders over here is that people look to you. People look at leaders to find what to do. In current situation, for example, when we are facing this COVID, you see the government took action. The government made a decisive decision to actually MCO everyone. We introduced movement control order, and we quickly established work from home procedures. Only those who are in the critical and frontliners are allowed to go out. So this way, in a situation, we must first of all contain the situation, and from there we start to rebuild back again. So now we are in the recovery phase. So taking examples from what we're facing in COVID-19 pandemic over here, that we find we are now in a circle of things that we are supposed to do. First, there is a problem, global pandemic situation. Regionally, every country is affected. Even globally, the economy is essentially crumbling. 1.6 billion will be out of a job. But at the same time, we have a situation whereby it is threatening our very own survival. So we need to eliminate that. So leadership here, people look for leadership. So the government have taken action now to introduce MCO or PKP in Malay, whereby everyone being asked not to move around. Only those who are needed in the critical services and the frontliners are allowed to go out. As we slowly understand the situation, we start to loosen up a bit. Because why? The economy cannot withstand prolonged movement control order. And now we are into recovery phase. We are slowly opening up. And furthermore from this, we have packages, like Prihatin, we have Penjana, and these are measures that need. But these are what government have put into place. But it is for the entity, business, people, or even individuals to take it from there. As it is now, as we come into the RMCO, Recovery Movement Control Order, it is basically up to ourselves now to ensure that we shield ourselves from the virus. So now, how do I relate that into what we are doing now? Into this topic we're discussing, resilient leaders. So in every situation, this is where now, as you see now, business outside there, they are reinventing themselves. They are looking, because some businesses, they can't survive. So they have to reinvent themselves. Those who can't will slowly fade out. So this is where now, being adaptive, being resilient, taking opportunity. There are new businesses coming up. For example, all the e-services. Suddenly we realize that we are now, we can actually order food from home. We can do many things from home, the e-services. So even the government now is moving in a big way to transform most of services into e-services, that people can just do their businesses with the government through e-connection. So this is where now, moving forward, and I think this is also an opportunity, that COVID-19 situation provides us with an opportunity. It opened our eyes that there are services that we can actually provide online, and it forces us to think. So otherwise, we would have just be just business as usual. But the situation forces us to think, and bring us set out of our own cocoon of comfort and come up with things. So moving forward from there, this way now, I think all the ministries and departments, government departments have been asked to look into ways and means how we can provide more services online. And as we know now, we are into IR 4.0 globally also. People are moving more and more into IT ecosystem. I was in session with CEO of Malaysia Airlines. They even now have virtual office. They don't have a permanent office. So this is where the future is. So I think a lot of businesses will also be doing the same. They can cut costs. They can cut the operation costs by having smaller office, people having working from home. And I think the government also will be looking into such. We need not have a very huge headcount because some services can be rendered to improvement in your IT facilitation and whatnot. So the challenges we face now, back to what I mentioned in the very early part, in Darwin postulation, survival of fittest, in the sense that if you want to remain relevant, if you want to survive in the future, you must bring yourself up to time. So that situation, the COVID-19, is an eye-opener because every day we are facing challenges of change. But these are small changes that sometimes we just brush it out as murmurings behind. But COVID-19 provided us with that impetus, provided with that situation whereby we really have to sit down and re-strategize ourselves. And this is where now a lot of businesses starts to mushroom. Even people in kampungs now can sell their produce and products online. We have now many people who are putting their products in the e-platform. So these are opportunities. These are people who take opportunities. And we should also. So this is what being resilient is all about, in the sense that you must not be taking failure as the end game, but you must take it as a starting point to better things ahead.
That's very interesting point that you just shared, Dato'. That we need to be aware what is happening around us, to have a positive attitude, try to lead with emotion, internalize the situation. Dato', those are the three questions that RSOG has. We now going to move to the questions from the participants. I'm going to read to Dato' some of the questions that we has already picked up. This question is from Encik Aniza Mokhtar. A question that we pick up from the Facebook. He asked, Dato', how I would like to know which style of leadership prevails in time of crisis. Will it be male-centric resilient leader or female-centric compassionate leader? Silakan, Dato'.
I'm gender blind actually. When it comes to where I'm sitting, I'm supposed to be gender blind. Of course, we have actually a policy on gender to encourage more, because I feel that there are also talents which we have not fully tapped. So for that reason, government have also introduced policies to have more female participation in top management and whatnot. But to stereotype gender on certain profession, I'm not into that field. So back to the question just now, in the sense that what kind of leadership is needed in this current situation. So this is where now, as it transcends our discussion on resilient leaders. It provides a question on leadership itself. So leadership that requires in this time of crisis over here, yes, we have a high number of people who are facing uncertain futures in their workplace. Some I've been in communication with some colleagues in the business environment. Some are being VSS. Some are being paid on hourly basis. Some are being asked to work from to take unpaid leave. So there are situations. So from the other side of the fence over here, those who are impacted and affected are hoping for more compassionate leaders. They're hoping for leaders to share some of the burden, because in good times they work as a team, but in bad times they should also remain as a team. So for that reason, some companies are having a very huge pay cut so that's to maintain some semblance of welfare within the system. This is just temporary setback. This is where sometimes leaders also needed to be equipped with other characteristics. In this case over here, compassionate is also needed. So whether it's how male or female, how compassionate they are, I'm not into that psychology of gender, but I think in terms of traits, yes, we do need leaders. As I mentioned now, one of the qualities of resilient leaders over here is that they must be aware. They must have the emotions. So this is where now this kind of leadership is also part and parcel of resilient leaders. They must have emotions, knowing that there are segments of societies who are badly impacted. At the same time, also resilient leaders must also have the characteristic to take advantage of the situation and to bring themselves up further into the value chain. So compassionate is one, but there's also other qualities that's needed in this time of situation. We need leaders who are decisive. This is also qualities of resilient leaders. Leaders who are decisive in the sense that right or wrong, you make a decision, and from there you improve, because time is not with us. In the situation of COVID, the government have taken a decision on 18th of March to actually MCO everyone. So that was a decision. That was a decisive decision that we have, and we cannot have second thinking about that. So one of the qualities of resilient leaders over here is that they must be decisive. Of course, as we recover, we notice the damage been done. So there are also requirements for leaders to be a bit sensitive, compassionate. They must understand the emotions of societies and whatnot. So yes, to answer the question from Anissa Mohta over here, is that yes, but I'm not going to the gender part, but the quality of a leader needed facing the current situation. Thank you, Anissa, for your question. But I believe when it comes to gender, all of us have got thinking, because yes, God created both male and female. They all have strength in each other. But I think collectively, this is where we can actually use the strength of each other to move forward.
Dato', our next question is from Mr. Bobby Mortios. He agreed that we need a lot of resilient leader in organization. His question is, how do we cultivate this kind of leadership among existing leaders, as they feel so comfortable and complacent with their position and remuneration, and thinking of the sustainable future of the organization?
Thank you. I heard you mentioned he's from Greek.
I'm not so sure, Dato'. His name sounds like
Sounds great.
from outside Malaysia.
True, Johari. As I mentioned now, everything around us is changing. The landscape is changing, but some small changes that we don't even notice. That brings us actually to most of us. We have become comfortable. We are comforted. I think the government have been saying that it's no longer business as usual. I think everyone has heard about this. We are thinking about having new ways of doing things. We cannot be comforted. So yes, there are leaders who are very much comforted in where they are, and they are not industrious enough. So in the leadership, this way now, there are two doctrine of leaders. One is that, as we know, some fast food, they have SOPs. So you just follow the SOPs, and then you become the managers. So they follow through to the T. They follow through to the T what needs to be done. Whenever there's a deviation, whenever there's something different, they call to the HQ and see what we need to do. So these are leaders actually at the bottom rank. They are equipped with the SOPs what to do. But when it comes to bringing them to a higher level of leadership, this is where there's no SOPs. This is where it differentiates between the boys and the men. Sorry to be of that gender bias again. It differentiates between the boys and the men. So big leaders, the big boys, they don't have SOPs. They have to create, they have to reinvent themselves. This is where to training, to coaching. As someone who are in the pyramid of organization, it is incumbent upon the top leadership to ensure that they choose the right people to continue up the ladder. So in any organization, we always divide ourselves into two: the critical competencies and the core competencies. In a bank, you must have a banker. to operate a bank. So it is actually, it's a core competency. So if you have a bank, but you don't have a banker in the bank, then you can't operate a bank. So one of the equipment over here is that you need actually the core competencies, a banker in a bank. But the banker will have a limitation. When it comes to the high end of the leadership, this is where the critical competencies come into picture. The critical competencies over here is the people who are well-rounded, who are more equipped, more exposed. So training and exposures to the nuances of leadership is very important. So I do agree that a lot of people can become managers, you know, by just following the SOPs, but they can never go beyond that. So for those who have visions to go up the ladder, they must actually abandon the comfort level and actually push the envelope further. So this is where it would differentiate between the boys and the men and the girls and the women. To be
Very
gender.
interesting. That's a very interesting point, Dato'. Mr. Bobby Motios just texted to us. He said that, Dato', I'm not from Greece. I'm from Kota Kinabalu, Sabah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, another question, Dato', from the Facebook page from Cik Muhammad Amir Harun. His question is rather short. Is resilience similar to being adaptable?
The resilience seems to be adaptable. Okay. Yeah. I think I've explained just now in the sense that adaptive is just a matter of survival. As what Darwin says over here, we have read natural evolution. Those who fail to adapt to the environment will fade out. They will lose out. You know, but that is just survival. I think if you want to succeed in life, you must be a bit more than just adaptive. You need to be resilient. As I mentioned now, a few of the characteristics of a resilient person over here is that they must not take failure as a setback. They must take everything as a challenge for them to improve themselves better. So they take opportunities, they seize opportunities from situation. We have many sayings in the business circles in the sense that, you know, a good businessman is that when they see problem, they see money. So they can actually taking advantage of situation, they can position themselves better. So this differentiate normal people with those with resilient traits. So back to question by Amir Harun just now here that if you want to survive, it's just adaptive. You adapt yourself. But if you want to be more successful in life, you need to have more than that. You need to be more resilient. As I mentioned just now, in the saying of Hang Tuah, tidak Melayu hilang di dunia, when you adapt, you can still be there. But for you to go up, one notch up, you must have other characteristics. So the very basic over here is adaptive. I do agree. For you to remain in the picture, you must be adaptive. But for you to be outstanding, you need other characteristics.
I read to you a follow-up question from Wan Darniza Daud. Her question states, does being resilient means you have to get out of your comfort zones?
Yes, I believe so. This is where, as I mentioned just now, you need to actually challenge yourself. You need to be actively engaged, aware of the situation. You must get yourself emotionally involved to understand the situation and see what you need to do best for you to take advantage of the situation. Not only take advantage, actually, maybe that's not the right word to use, but basically to turn the situation from a negative to a positive. You know, it's just not pure survival, but making yourself going up the value chain, up higher in the ladder. So we must not be comforted. We must continuously challenge ourselves and see. So this is where sometimes we see in the histories of leaders. These leaders are those people who doesn't take things sitting down or lying down. They will seize the opportunity. They would be designing. The mind is always thinking on how to make things better. So if you want to sell goreng pisang, you know, you must have a vision from your gerai So one day you can just become, you know, you can sell durian, you can sell your goreng pisang on e-platform. You can go globally, or you can have a fast food on goreng pisang. So being comforted selling goreng pisang, even you sell 1,000 ringgit worth of goreng pisang per day, your life remains as that. Every day in and out, you have to go to the market, buy bananas, and then go to your store and fry it. But I think if you want to be more successful in life, you must start to think how you can use the skill that you have or the products that you have, you know, to get better access to market, to get bigger market. So being comforted, being comfortable would not bring us anywhere. So this is where now we find, I mean, I'm in the civil service over here, we find many layers of leaders, you know, from the section, the DGs, the deputies, the undersecretaries and whatnot. This is where we also have that challenge, whereby day to day, yes, you have your job ready day to day. You know, you have applications coming onto your desk, you have letters, you have to reply them every day. But you need also to spend some time on how to improve things, you know, without sacrificing on the quality of service that you have, on the needed services that you have to deliver every day, but you also need to think on how best to improve. So God has given us a set of brain, Johari, and I've always mentioned to my officers over here that you cannot, the brain will follow you to your grave. So there's no point of you saving capacity in your brain. Might as well use it now. Because why? When you are dead, your brain is so dead. So the capacity that we're using our brain now is very, very little. There's still a lot more capacity. We must exercise our brain. We must think hard, because the moment we die, you cannot, you know, you cannot put in your wasiat, I leave my brain to my children. They can't use it. So it is for you to use. So use your brain while you still have your life, because the moment you're dead, your brain is dead. So now, this is where God has given us capacity. I don't think there's a word for it, terabyte or whatever. After tera, I don't know what byte we have. Our brain has got that many capacities, but we are not using as much. So for those people who are up to challenges, you know, they always think how to improve things, how to make themselves better. But what we're facing over here is that we find so many people who are just comforted in their comfort zone. Even when it comes to promotion, they start to lobby here and there without showing evidence of how they have performed. And if we continue to promote these people, you know, we will be facing a situation whereby these people, we put them in a place of leadership, but they cannot lead. So I believe in whatever that we do, in whatever position that we have, it is actually a position of trust, you know, amanah, that we have to deliver. It is not about what you take home, but we must remember that what we take home as our salary remuneration is also what we deserve. If we don't deserve that, you know, we have to answer for that. So basically, you must have that that passion in life. That's what I said. Sometimes you have to be emotion. Sometimes you have to have your young blood with you, angry with the system that you want to change for the betterment. There's so many people angry with so many things, but they just lash out their angriness on Facebook and Twitter and WhatsApp, whatnot. But they have not think about what to do. So we have still capacities in our brain that we can use and come up with more critical solution on how to improve things. So a leadership, a very long answer to a very short question over here, because leadership over here is that we must make sure that when we promote people, when we elevate people to a position of leaders, you know, these are the people who would then be doing the thinking for us. So people who doesn't want to use their brain, who are very comfortable and waiting for the time when they get promoted, these are people who would not bring much benefit to our society.
Dato', you attracted a lot of questions. I read you the next question. The question from J. Azlan Muhammad Saleh says that Dato', surrounded by protocol, procedure, structured system and many other things, those are recipes lead us to become more rigid and become less resilient in many ways around. How do you perceive this issue, Dato'?
Okay, thank you. I would like to address this going back to the word bureaucracy. I believe in government office we have so many SOPs. Even when we have ceremonies, we have protocols to follow. These are the SOPs. I would call it SOPs. Bureaucracy is not a dirty word. Bureaucracy provides a semblance of normalcy, your expectation. So when you have your procedures, you know what to do. So we don't leave a blank page. We don't give them a blank page to decide. It will save us time. It will save us a lot of things when we have already SOPs in place. So over here, in facing situation, yes, we are quite regimented in a sense. We are very rigid because over time it's been tested that these are the things required when we do a job. We have audit whether we have followed through the T. But moving forward, I believe there are, as I mentioned just now, there are people who will just take things as is. You know, I'm being given A to Z on things to do. I follow exactly what the book asked me to do. This is the bare minimum actually. I think what we need to do over here is that there must be continuous improvement of Kaizen to things so that we leave behind a legacy of improvement. So yes, of course, in Azhar, in our situation, basically our society, there are hierarchies, there are protocols. They are in place for obvious reasons, for various reasons. But it doesn't stop us now from improving. But the improvement must have the consensus because the whatever SOPs, whatever protocol that we have, these are the consensus of many. So if there's a need for us to change all those things for a betterment, for a more quicker decision, for a more effective management, there must be consensus. So this way now, it doesn't stop us, it doesn't stop the leaders, even at the lower hierarchies, from thinking how to improve things better. I remember we used to have these QCCs early on. Now, the QCC is supposed to address, you know, the situation at your workplace, how to improve things. You know, sometimes the input can come from any of your employees, how to improve things. But over time, the QCCs have become a bit more. It's just like a game. You know, it becomes like you know, people compete in QCCs just for the facade of it. You know, but the internalization is not there. But QCCs in the olden days, what been practiced in factories over here is that, you know, these are the SOPs that we have. Some people, when they do the assembly line, you know, they notice that, no, I can improve this better. You know, so this is where now we need not stuck ourselves in the SOPs, the 60s SOPs or 70s SOPs. As we go along, we need to change. That's why I mentioned now the thinking process. We must actually start to think how we can improve things better. Because why? If we fail to improve ourselves, if we just follow through as business as usual, we'll be actually left out behind. So, but in adapting to a new landscape is one, but actually the other one is actually to bring us to a better height, to a higher height. So this is where now adapting is one part, but there are also the other second part, which is how to get things on a quantum leap. You know, you can improve yourself quantumly by having that kind of critical thinking. So back to the questions now. Yes, we find ourselves quite tied up to the SOPs and protocol, very rigid, but these are the consensus of society, these are the consensus of the management. If you need to change that, it is not a cast in stone. Everything can be changed, and it's up to each and every one of us to see how we can improve things better.
This question from Galaxy A7. He asks you, the real test of leadership and resilience is how we show up during a crisis. My question is how we encourage others to show up.
The current COVID situation, again, Johari?
A real test of leadership and resilience is how we show up during a crisis. The question, how do we encourage others to show up?
How do we encourage others to show up? Okay, during the last PKP, I watched this short video sent through my WhatsApp group. it shows the airline PIA when they crash landed at the airport in Pakistan. Of course, they ran short of the runway, but what's important over here is that when you see the pilot, although he knows that the plane is going to crash and the chances of survival is almost nil, but he was very calm. He was very calm in his address in his announcement to the passenger. So here, in a situation of crisis, leaders must be calm. They must maintain, they must compose themselves. They must not be, if you see the Titanic is sinking, even the captain is so running helter-skelter and pulling his hair, then he's not a good captain. So a good leader over here is that even in times people look up to you, then you must remain calm. You must portray that. So now, we saw every day on TV, our DG of Health appears on TV trying to give all information transparently and in a very calm manner to ensure that everything is controlled. So this is a sign of a good leader, in the sense that they are not panicky. So we have people, even not on TV screens, who exude some of this quality when they approach their downliners. So one of the things that we must make sure is that we must remain calm for leaders. So no matter how difficult or how deep the gravity of the situation, leaders must not panic, because if leaders are panicked, the one that you are supposed to lead will also be in a situation of, they will also be very much afraid or worried. So leaders must be calm. So this is where now, in any situation, leaders must understand the issue. As I mentioned now, they must be engaged, emotionally involved, aware of the situation, knowing the gravity of the issue. No matter how deep it is, they must maintain their calm.
I can feel your calmness, Dato'. Dato', the next question is from Dr. Megat Sani in Kedah. His question, Dato', in current situation, leaders who are taking the risk in their decision making might put himself at stake. What are your advices to overcome this?
Thank you, Megat. Yeah, I met him last week. Yes, this is where sometimes, as I mentioned just now, we cannot remain static. Things are changing. We also need to change with time. There are certain procedures within our own organization that are very antiquated in its outlook. And of course, when audit comes, they check your work as against the SOP. And any deviation, it will be highlighted that you are not following through. So the risk for leaders over here is that, yes, as I mentioned now, as we discussed earlier on, if we were to maintain status quo, we'll be left behind, because people are moving far ahead, more advanced than we are, but we remain. But that doesn't stop us. That should not stop us from improving things. So even at my end over here, we are trying to give some latitude. There are some disciplinary cases involving officers, engineers who have not followed through, but we do take into cognizance there are some initiatives, that doesn't cause the government damage, that they have done good, although they have not followed through the SOP. But this has got to be taken in a more concerted effort, in the sense that we must allow leaders to take leadership. So, for example, in the last MCO, during the MCOs, we actually delegated the decision for work from home to the respective heads of departments and divisions. So we cannot centrally control in Putrajaya what's happening all over the country. So we have allowed that latitude of leaders at the various levels to exercise their discretion. Of course, these are risks that you take. There are services that you have to provide, but at the same time, you're also facing with the number of people that you can bring to office. We have to put that at a bare minimum, but at the same time, without sacrificing the quality of service that you render. So these are the decisions that leaders have to take. In following through the SOPs, this is where I believe as we go along, we need to improve things. We cannot just remain, our circulars remains in the 80s and 90s. we have to bring them to current. There are actually changes around us that requires us to change as well. So being leaders, you must take this upon yourself to impact changes, to effect changes. So we have gone through this discussion just now. If we remain status quo, remain comfortable, we will not go far. Time now requires leaders to take charge, to take leadership and think and change. So we've been teaching. I think RSOG, Intan, and many institutions have been teaching about leadership, but it has not affected any changes because we are still stuck with that. So I think we need to be a bit more forceful in making changes, but these changes, as I mentioned, must have the consensus, must also get approval, because whatever it is, it must bring us to a better elevation rather than making us the other way around. So what Dr. Megat mentioned just now about risk over here, that yes, it is within the system, because the bureaucracy is so huge. We do not want anyone to have their own ways and means to do things. We have a standard SOP to do. But over here, this is where sometimes we need to start, either from the bottom up or the top down. We must continuously reinvent ourselves, reinvent our circulars, reinvent our SOPs to make it to current. Moving forward, if you have to have e-government, we can't be using the old same system. In fact, if you look at income tax, you can declare your income tax now, but you don't have to submit. You just submit your income tax online, and you keep your receipts and bills for 7 years. But for us in the government, we still have to submit our claims physically every month. So we must move with time. I don't see in 2050 you still submit your borang tuntutan perjalanan, your monthly claims on paper. So at what point do we have to change? So we have to change. So because people now are go paperless, people now are going for green procurement. So we must make sure that we are, as I mentioned now, we must be sensitive to our environment. We must know what the society wants. We must change towards that. So even in the circular, somewhere indicated, we are now trying to maneuver. We're now trying to propose and pioneer some approaches that we go paperless. One of the things that we are looking at is actually now on paperless claim. So can you imagine, Johari, everyone of us in the civil service know, when you want to claim, you have to append to your claim not only the form which your boss will sign, but all your meeting calls, the memorandums, your toll chart, your toll receipts, your toll card owner, your bank statement, everything. You have to photostat and clamp it together. You see how much toners, papers that we spend simply because we don't have people who want to bring us out of that physical paper submission to an e-environment. But we have to do it. Because why? It costs money, it costs time. So as I mentioned now, even Malaysia Airlines has got online office. They don't have any physical office anymore. They are now all on virtual office. So, and here we are, our desks are stuck with papers. So I think there's a need for us to relook back and reinvent ourselves and become more resilient leaders, adaptive to the current need of the time, and also looking forward to make us future-proof.
Datuk, coincidentally, there's this question from income tax, but it's not relating to your filing. Datuk.
Okay, I've done mine.
Datuk Dr. Sotimen Mulhalib from Lembaga Hasil asking, recent development have been very much influenced by technology. Could Datuk share a bit about the necessary competencies a leader should equip themselves to remain relevant in this environment?
Thank you. Going back to the three quotations I took on the very first part, survival of the fittest. I'm in the baby boomers generations. When I started working, we still have our typists and typewriters. We also have stenographers. But as we go along now, I type my own letters. You reply your own emails. Computers in the mid-90s, there's only one or two in office. You queue to go to your computer. With Windows, now everyone have got one on their desk. And now, we have a handphone. We can't run away. So this is where just now, the word adaptive is, if you can't use technology you'll be left behind. But also looking from at this one here, this way now, we need to be a bit more resilient in the sense that everyone is using a smartphone. So now we have see how best that we can deliver our service from the phone. People no longer go to kiosks. People order their food. You know, I mentioned just now, before this COVID-19, you can just sit in your room, you can plan your holiday in Sweden. You know, you can book your e-hailing car, you can go to the airport, you can choose the seat that you want, you can choose the food that you want, and when you reach in Copenhagen, you can even get your e-hailing cab, and you can even book your hotels or everything. So everything is being done at the comfort of your home. The moment you decide to, the moment for the day of travel, then only you start. Before this, you know, traveling is such a hassle. You know, you have to book the travel agent, the tickets and everything. Now you do it yourself. You even can choose whether you want a window seat or aisle seat, whether you want what kind of food in your plane if you are traveling if the airline provides such services. So the environment now requires us to be IT savvy. Technology is one thing that you know, in the IR 4.0, everyone is rushing through to provide services online. And so does the government and any other organization. There are still some services that requires the traditional way of doing things, but you know, these are limited, and I think as we go along, many will be replaced by technology. So even in the government over here, in the sense that we spend billions in systems, but most of the systems, I think we can actually generate a lot more services through those systems. Currently, a lot of it are being used as filing and storing information. For that reason, that's why you can renew your passport in 1 hour, you can get your IC within 30 minutes because all data are there. But I think we need to go beyond that in the sense that we have capacities in our systems, what else that we can do to provide more services at the tip of your finger. So being leaders over here is that as we move through the value chain in our progression in careers, you cannot be left behind. You must be current with time. So now people are talking about IR 4.0. So our thinking must also be in the IT set. So as I mentioned now, those who are born in the 60s, you know, they can never imagine. They can never imagine what future lies. And today, everything you can do, even your banking on the phone. But today, can you imagine what will happen in the next 20 years or in the next 30 years? What kind of environment that we are in? You know, I always envy my father. You know, he walked to school barefooted. In his lifetime, you know, he has changed the world from seeing 1 or 2 cars passing by the kampung and then owning a car, from seeing a plane very, you know, not so often, he can fly. You know, he started his learning how to write an email at the age of 80. So he is changing. Because why? There are technologies available. So in one lifespan, you've seen people in our forefathers, in our fathers and grandfathers, from a very kampung lifestyle, they have now become technology savvy. But now today, those people who are now in the current productive years, can you imagine next 30 years? In your whole lifespan, what will change? In the baby boomers, which I'm in now, I'm exiting the active service in a few years' time. So we have seen from zero to IT. But now the current IT, with the 5Gs coming out and whatnot, we must anticipate that. So we must look into the future and make ourselves ready for the future. You cannot be reactive, we must be proactive.
Yang berbahagia Datuk, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's session. Before we end the session, Datuk, would you like to offer some parting words to the participant?
Thank you, Joe. Since we are talking on the title of leadership over here, my last word over here is that leadership is not a position that it is a position of trust actually. It is a position that when you are there, you are able to change things. You must take it upon yourself to do changes which you think should be done. That's why I say it's better for you to be angry with the system and see what you want to change. We have a lot of people who are just complacent, who are just enjoying their roles as the number one. But actually, a lot of people are looking at your number one to see what better they can bring, you know, to safeguard your future, to bring your company's organization into better visibility and better service. So now, talking on the topic of leadership, this is where my fervent hope over here is that those who are in the position of change, you need to change. You need to make your organization ready to face any eventualities. So that's it, Johari. My parting word is actually leaders actually is a position of trust, and people look onto you to provide direction. So it is not something that you can just enjoy, but it's also a position whereby people expect you to make changes. So we change things when we can. So once we are no longer in that position, I think nothing much we can do. So while we are in a position to change, we change.
We couldn't agree more on your parting words, Dato'. We would like to thank Yang Berbahagia, Dato' Muhammad Karut Adib, for spending time with us today. Dato', our webinar session is really full house in Zoom, and there are a lot of people following on the Facebook as well. We also thank the participants for taking part this morning. We value your views and feedback. We apologize for any shortcoming, especially the question that we cannot read. There are so many questions that we received in this session. Please follow us on social media for our future session. Till we meet again, take care, stay safe, and thank you. Terima kasih banyak, Dato'. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Jori, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Dato'. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you. Thank you.